caught my wife cheating, moved on, and found new love until my ex tried to run us over in a jealous rage. I've been lurking on Reddit for a while, but today, I finally have a story to tell. My life has been so chaotic that I haven't had a moment to breathe, let alone write about it. Now that everything has been resolved, I hope sharing my story will help someone avoid a similar situation. Let me introduce myself. I'm a 36-year-old man who married Carolyn, a 35-year-old woman, thinking it would be forever. For 6 years, I thought I had found my soulmate. We met on Instagram, and she seemed perfect, funny, beautiful, and kind. Given my chaotic upbringing, I was cautious. My father endured abuse from my mother, who often erupted into screaming matches and destructive behavior. Watching that growing up, I was always on high alert for red flags. Carolyn passed every test with flying colors. She was patient, generous, and loving everything my mother wasn't. I thought I had broken the cycle of dysfunction in my family. We had a beautiful wedding, bought a suburban home, and began building what I believed would be our happily ever after. But 2 years into our marriage, things started to unravel. Arguments became a monthly ritual over the most trivial issues: dirty dishes, late work hours, or even the TV shows we watched. I was determined to make it work. I suggested couples therapy, but Carolyn wasn't interested. She attended one session and stormed out, calling the therapist a quack. Her behavior worsened after her father passed away. Grief does strange things to people, so I tried to be patient, but she refused to seek help. Our fights became screaming matches that woke the neighbors. Eventually, we settled into a cold, distant routine, sharing a house but not a life. I still clung to the hope that we could fix things. I believed in the for better or worse part of our vows. What I didn't realize was that Carolyn had already broken another vow, forsaking all others. One day, I was called home early from a work trip due to an emergency at the office. I decided to surprise Carolyn with flowers, champagne, and chocolates, hoping to rekindle our connection. I arrived home, excited to see her, but instead, I walked into a nightmare. Her car was in the driveway, her favorite playlist was playing upstairs, and 2 wine glasses were in the sink. Still, I didn't suspect anything. I went upstairs, eager to surprise her, only to find her in our bed with another man. My world shattered. Every loving memory, every promise, every "I love you" turned to ash in an instant. Carolyn didn't even try to hide it. She looked irritated, annoyed that I came home early. Her first words to me? "Why are you even back?" The man scrambled to leave, but I couldn't let him go without confronting him. I grabbed him by the throat, but stopped short of doing anything worse. He wasn't the one who betrayed me, Carolyn was. When I turned to her, she acted nonchalant, brushing her hair in the mirror as if nothing had happened. She had the audacity to blame me, saying, "You weren't supposed to be back." She even tried to justify her actions, claiming I had ignored her needs after refusing her request for an open relationship months earlier. I was furious, but I refused to let anger control me. I walked away, knowing that nothing I said or did would change who she was. After the affair, I filed for divorce. It was painful, but I knew it was the right decision. During the process, I met someone new, a kind, genuine woman who showed me what real love looks like. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I felt happy again. But Carolyn wasn't done with me. One evening, while I was out with my new girlfriend, Carolyn showed up in a jealous rage. She screamed at us, accusing me of betraying her. When we ignored her and tried to leave, She got into her car and tried to run us over. Thankfully, we weren't hurt, and the police intervened. Carolyn faced legal consequences for her actions, and I've since cut all ties with her. Looking back, I realize how blind love can make you. I ignored red flags and held on to a marriage that was already broken because I was afraid of failure. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: love yourself enough to walk away from someone who doesn't value you. Now, I'm rebuilding my life with someone who truly cares for me. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. To anyone in a toxic relationship, know this: you deserve better. Always. When I was ill, her manipulation was almost impressive if it weren't so devastating. I knew I had to leave the house. It practically reeked of betrayal. The treachery clung to everything: our linens, the air, even the bed where I had once comforted her during her darkest moments. It had become tainted, soaked in the scent of another man. I grabbed my keys and some cash and drove aimlessly, ending up at my friend Mark's house. Mark, ever the perceptive one, took one look at me, poured a glass of whiskey, and said exactly what I needed to hear. "You need a lawyer." Now, Mark had been through a divorce himself and knew the ropes. But here's the kicker: Carolyn, my wife, worked part-time at a boutique, pretending to have a career while I was pulling in six figures. This meant I might have to pay her alimony. Yes, the same woman who cheated on me could end up draining my finances. Mark, being the sharp guy he is, reminded me that adultery could impact alimony in our state. "Document everything," he insisted: emails, texts, receipts, whatever would prove her infidelity. I couldn't believe how quickly my life had crumbled. That morning, I'd been a happy husband planning a surprise for my wife. By evening, I was sitting in Mark's living room, whiskey in hand, Googling divorce attorneys while trying not to vomit from the sheer betrayal. Then the text started. Carolyn, unable to control me in person, decided to rip into me through messages. The things she said were vile. This woman, who just a week ago texted me, "I love you," with heart emojis, was now tearing me apart in explicit detail. She compared me to her affair partner in the most humiliating ways, describing her dissatisfaction in excruciating detail as if she were leaving a scathing Yelp review. She accused me of ruining her happiness by catching her in the act, calling me selfish for interrupting her true love. The mental gymnastics she performed were Olympic-worthy. Thankfully, Mark was there, shouting, "Screenshot everything," and I did. Every cruel word, every damning admission was saved before she had the sense to delete it. From there, the chaos only escalated. Carolyn avoided being served divorce papers for weeks, resorting to lies and evasive tactics. She turned the process into a circus, dragging it out and inflating my legal costs out of spite. Meanwhile, I tried to distract myself. Casual flings, dating apps, they all left me feeling hollow. Then, one Saturday, I wandered into a small bookstore, looking to reconnect with something that once brought me joy. That's where I met Emma. She laughed softly when she saw my confusion in the Sky-Fi section. Her kindness and genuine passion for books drew me in. We spent hours talking, and for the first time in months, I felt seen. When I left with her number and a book recommendation, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Emma was everything Carolyn wasn't. She listened, cared, and supported me without judgment. She even helped me navigate the storm that was my ongoing divorce. But Carolyn wasn't done with me. One evening, as Emma and I walked to her car in a mall parking lot, the sound of a roaring engine shattered the peace. A car sped toward us. I barely managed to pull Emma aside, but not before it clipped her leg, breaking it. As I scrambled to get Emma to safety, the car came back for another attempt. When it crashed into parked vehicles nearby, I realized this wasn't an accident. And then, Carolyn stepped out of the driver's seat, looking as composed as ever, with a madness in her eyes that froze my blood. This was no longer about divorce or spite. This was about survival. Here's a rewritten version of your script for clarity, flow, and emotional impact. It wasn't just a drunk driver or a random road incident. This was deliberate. Carolyn, my ex-wife, had targeted Emma, the woman who had done nothing but bring happiness back into my life. She wasn't just aiming to hurt me, she wanted to destroy us both. When I saw Emma's fractured leg and heard her pained whimpers, something broke inside me. The realization hit me hard. Carolyn had tried to kill us. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was premeditated. Carolyn had followed us, waited for the perfect opportunity, and made a conscious decision to ram us with her car. I held Emma close, trying to keep her calm while keeping one eye on Carolyn. The woman who stepped out of that car wasn't the person I had been married to for 6 years. Even the cheating woman I had caught in our bed wasn't this person. No, this was something else entirely, a monster wearing her face. Her expression was blank, but her blazing eyes burned with hatred as she approached us, heels clicking on the pavement like a twisted countdown. Before she could get any closer, a bystander, a man who looked like a linebacker, grabbed her. Even restrained, she thrashed and screamed like a feral animal, straining to get to us. Emma was in excruciating pain as the ambulance arrived, but she still managed to smile at me, trying to reassure me she was okay. Meanwhile, Carolyn, handcuffed and screaming, shouted accusations at me in front of everyone. "It's only been a year, and you're already walking around with her?" She shrieked, her voice dripping with venom. She acted as though she was the victim, despite having just attempted murder in broad daylight. The absurdity of it all hit me like a punch to the gut. This was the same woman I had once loved enough to marry, the same woman who had cheated on me and dragged out our divorce out of spite. Now, she was in the back of a police car, screaming profanities, while Emma's blood was still on my hands from trying to help her. Carolyn's behavior didn't stop there. During the trial, the DA presented overwhelming evidence. Security footage showed her circling the parking lot multiple times, watching and waiting. Then, like a predator, she struck. The video captured it all, the impact that shattered Emma's leg, Carolyn reversing to try again, and me pulling Emma to safety. The most chilling part? Before she made her move, Carolyn adjusted her makeup in her car mirror. It was as if she were preparing for a meeting, not plotting to kill. The trial ended with a guilty verdict: reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder. Carolyn received a 12-year sentence, though good behavior might reduce it. It felt like a slap on the wrist for what she had done, but at least we had some time to breathe without looking over our shoulders. The divorce proceedings that followed were surprisingly swift. Carolyn attended via video call from prison, and the judge dismissed every one of her demands. No alimony, no assets, nothing. Her actions had burned every bridge, leaving her with only a prison cell to call her own. Emma's recovery was nothing short of inspiring. Despite months of physical therapy and a massive leg cast, she never wavered. When I nervously told her who had been behind the wheel that day, expecting her to leave me, she simply took my hand and said, "At least she'll have plenty of time to work on her road rage in prison. Now Emma and I are planning our future together. We've moved to a beautiful apartment in the city, far from the shadows of my past." Her strength and resilience continue to amaze me, and I'm endlessly grateful to have her by my side. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. No matter how dark things get, there's always a path forward. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more shocking real-life tales.